We will move on to expressions. So before we get on to the main topic, we will play a game. But Nisha, you have a question. Would you want to unmute and ask? I'm just going to lower her hand. So here we're going to play a very quick game just to kind of get everybody warmed up. I want you all to, in the chat box, tell me if the sentence is right or wrong. If you all have been paying attention to all the language classes that have been happening, or even if you all are not, that's fine. Let me know, is this the right answer or the wrong answer? Is this sentence grammatically correct?
Yes, it is correct.
It's correct. Okay. Vaishnavi says it's yes. You all can quickly tell me in the chat box. Okay. You all can just type yes, no, yes, no. We can just keep it interactive. Vaishnavi has said yes. Shrita has said yes. Priyanka has said yes. What about the others? Quickly. Correct? Incorrect? Okay. I'm going to select correct because that's what most of you all have said. However, it's not the right answer. I am having is actually incorrect. So Nikita and Anu, I see that you've got that right. Awesome job. I have a question about the safety procedure, or I'm not sure. We do not use I am having a doubt. All right. So this is the first thing that you'll have to remember. ING is when something is happening, like I am talking right now, right? So having a doubt is incorrect. It's always I have a doubt. But good attempt. Let's move on to the next one. Between these two options that are there, which one sounds more professional? A or B? Let me know in the chat box quickly. Just tell A or B. B, what about the others? I know it's 10 o'clock at night and we've got 6 more slides to go through. A, okay. What about the others? B. So I think majority have gotten this one right. Revert back, Nikita, is incorrect English. We don't say revert back or reply back because reply and revert both means coming back to you. So you generally say, I will get back to you, or I will revert by the end of the day, or I will reply by the end of the day. Revert back is absolutely wrong. Moving on to the next one. I want you all to tell me which is the correct expression to complete the sentence over here. However, all right. So however, I handle the situation, right? Okay. But however, okay, that's interesting, Shritha. So the right answer in this case is however. You do not use but, however, because both words are interdependent. But is, what do you call it? Obstacle. So you can use but or however. You cannot use both together. All right. And remember this, whenever you're giving an answer, if it is dependent on each other, use however, use yet. But you can also use but. However, don't use but yet or but however. That's incorrect. All right. Let's move on to two more rounds, and then we'll get started with the real slides. Which one? I think everyone who's known me previously should know which one is the right answer. But yes, I'd love to hear from everyone who's here right now. Ayushi says B. I think all the institutes out there say that my name is Resham is the right way. We do not say myself Resham. All right. So Vaibhavi, no myself Vaibhavi. It is my name is Vaibhavi. Okay. Myself is incorrect when you're introducing yourself. Okay. And the bigger challenge is if you're applying for an airline and if you say myself, they by default know you are at an elementary level while you are supposed to be at an intermediate level. So know myself. All right. Lovely. My name is Priya. And the last question right now. Oops, did I miss out on a? Let's quickly get this right. Incorrect. I will get back to you. Okay, I think it's only gotten 4 rounds. So fair enough. Now, let's move on to the more important thing, which is why all of you all are here. I'm going to help you all understand how do we actually elevate you all from an A2 to a B1. Anyone who has any doubts on what is A2, what is B2, quickly let me know. If you all want me to explain to you the difference between A1, A2, B1, B2, we could quickly touch upon that and then move on to explaining why should you move from an A2 to a B2. All right. So in English language, there are 6 levels. Okay. So there's A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. Now, this is defined as per the CEFR framework. Now, more importantly, what you'll need to understand in very simple terms. A1 is someone who says, my name is Resham. But if they are not clear, they will say myself or me Resham, which is both incorrect. So A1 is someone where you can introduce yourself correctly. A2 is where you can compare two things. So if you all have given interviews previously, which weather do you like? Sunny or rainy? Or do you like hill stations or do you like mountains? Do you like beaches or do you like mountains? Uh, compare your the city that you're living in and your birth city. So whenever they're asking you to compare two things, that's at an A2 level, which means you're just about getting there and becoming a B1. For someone who's at a B1 level, you should be able to give an opinion about something. For example, this phone is it's a OnePlus, it's a fantastic phone, it's very thin, etc., etc. Or if you're talking about, if you are possibly giving your opinion about butterflies, then what do you think about a butterfly, and possibly describing a butterfly. So when you're sharing an opinion about something, of course there are many more can do abilities, but if you're able to express your opinion clearly, that's at a B1 level. But B2 is where you get imaginary situations, you're put into imaginary situations and you can reply. Have you all ever faced an imaginary question in your interview? Like if you were the CEO of Wolf Airlines, how would you respond? Or if you had to go to outer space, how would you plan your day? Or if aliens came on Earth and had to interact with you, these are actual interview questions, okay, which people have asked me, or I have asked people, or airlines have asked cabin crew aspirants. One question which I vividly remember is, if you have to eat pizza for the rest of your life, what would you do? So, if you are able to answer imaginary questions, that's when you've reached a B2 level proficiency. So, in your interview, the minute the questions start getting difficult, you know that you are leveling, they're asking you questions that are going to reach a B2 level. I hope I could answer and explain the difference in a very simplistic manner between A1 to B2. Quickly tell me, girls, because I can't see any of y'all. Yeah, great. So now this particular webinar is largely to help you all understand, help you all realize that it's not just about the words that you use. It's how do you connect the dots? How do you explain and how do you express yourself fluently? How many of y'all actually say like when you don't know what else to say in a sentence? Yeah, we all use fillers like, also, probably. Which others? Quickly, just quickly tell me in the chat box, with which other fillers do you end up using? Literally, yes, literally, like everyone uses that. So the thing is, when we are having a conversation, we should not use like, also, literally all the time, because it indicates that you're searching for the word, right? You're constantly searching for the word key. Now, what do I use? So, one of the tricks of being able to structure your sentences correctly without using too many fillers is to use the right words, or to begin your sentences correctly so that you're not getting stuck. All right. So A2, if someone asks you what's good for a passenger, a A2 person would sound like how it's written on the screen. But B2, they're saying the same things, but they're using a wider range of words to express the same idea. Now, I know for a fact, searching words at that time becomes difficult, especially when the question is tough, right? So we have a couple of things in this webinar. Just let me know if it connects with you. First, everyone who's at a B1 level, giving your opinion with confidence. So let's say the question that is asked to you is about safety rules, right? So we generally in a conversation will say, sir, I think safety rules are very important. Passengers must follow the safety rules. because it is about their safety. They should not get hurt in the aircraft. But instead of saying, I think for everything, you can actually choose any of these phrases that are given on the screen. All right. So you could say, I strongly believe that passenger safety is of utmost importance for any airline. Or in my perspective, or from my perspective, passenger safety is important to maintain the brand's dignity. In my view, passengers who are extremely rude, the cabin crew has to pay more attention towards them so that they don't cause harm to other passengers. Now, what happens is when you're using these words in your brain, you get a few seconds extra to form your sentence. And that's how these phrases are very important, especially when y'all are giving your opinion while answering a question. All of them will not come naturally to you. Okay, so if I have to, I would never say it seems to me that, because वो मेरा style नहीं है, right? It's not the way I generally speak. In the same manner, y'all pick a phrase which is comfortable for you. Okay, so you don't have to use all the phrases all the time. All right. So just say it out loud since all of you are on mute, and let me know in the chat box which one comes to you most comfortably. And then we could possibly see which one. Of course, pronunciation is very, very important, very, very important. So if you are not sure of how to say perspective or concerned or opinion, right? If you're not comfortable, then pick another one. I strongly believe, I firmly believe. You can alternate the usage of strong, firm, in my opinion. So you can kind of use adjectives, but again use it correctly. As far as I'm concerned, generally, Priyanka, that's a great sentence to pick. However, make sure you're using it in the right way. All right. So my suggestion would be pick up two and kind of practice it and see how it naturally comes to you. All right. We'll move on to the next one. Okay, so this is about opinion. So a couple of opinion questions. Okay, a couple of opinion questions. I'm just going to spin a wheel on the other side to see what could be worked on. Agreeing and disagreeing. Now, this is something which I tell all my girls. Sometimes they ask you some questions, some very difficult questions. For example, let me just show you a difficult question. So this is a question, if all public transport became free, would it change how people travel? This typically is a B2 level question, a B1, B2 level question, because they're asking you for your opinion, right? Now, there are two things in this. You either agree with it or you disagree with it. That's when you use these phrases. Okay, so you can say, I completely agree that if public transport became free, it would improve the economy, or I share the same view. I couldn't agree more. I agree to a large extent if you're agreeing with a point. But if you're disagreeing, you can either say, no, in my opinion, and we can go back to it being opinion based. Or if you disagree with the question, you can say, I see it a little differently. I see it differently is a very nice way of disagreeing with someone. Because India, like if you go out and say, no, I don't agree with you, people actually get offended. People feel bad. They might not tell you. And that's when I realized that it's easier to say, I see it differently, or I understand your point, however, or I partially agree. Those words, those phrases are much better to use because they sound polite. So every time an interviewer asks you a question while they are testing your language, it's also important to know that you should disagree politely. Make sense? Is this making sense to you guys? Yeah. So if we have a question where you'll have to disagree or agree, remember one thing, difficult questions, imaginary questions, opinion questions, try and agree or disagree. Okay, so for example, I like the color, but I partially like the design. So it sounds nicer to the other person, and the other person feels heard. And with all of Instagram, all of social media, people don't feel heard. So when you blanket say no or yes, it becomes a problem. So while answering a question, try and use these phrases.
Ma'am, can I talk about an experience of mine? Like
Absolutely.
when I was asking my teacher for a doubt, like I was asking them something related my doubt, and he told me that he asked me some question, and I just said no, and he was like, "You know, that's not the right way to answer it. You could have said a reason than said no." I was dumbfounded at the moment.
Absolutely, Ayushi. And see what happens now. There's this screen which where you don't really know what the other person is going through. Maybe the person has had a very bad day, right? And again, this comes from experience. So I remember we were training the Puma team, and there was this very young guy. I think he must be 20, 22, 23 years old. And he was always with a smile, and in the warehouse, when he like when with the customer, he was always smiling. He would go back and he would cry even if he made a lot of money in selling. And then the trainer asked him, why are you crying? You literally oscillating or jumping from happy to sad. And he actually said something that touched our hearts. He said that I am happy that I'm making money so that I can go back and support my family, but I'm feeling sad because all the three members in my family are disabled and they cannot see the success which I'm bringing, which I'm doing at work. So, and that's when we realize that everybody's going through so much in their life that it's important to just be a little human, which is why disagreeing politely is much better than just blanketly saying no. This is very, very important when y'all are putting across your point, or when you are structuring your thoughts. It's important to use connectors. Now, there are basically four types of connectors which you all can choose. So, first is adding point. Firstly, I think it's important to speak clearly. Moreover, or secondly, no, secondly doesn't sound right. I generally say firstly and furthermore when I'm adding points, but you all can again pick. Furthermore does not come very naturally to me. When we're giving a reason, you can say this is because of, or one major factor, this can be contributed, the reason is, my thoughts are. You can, when you're giving a reason, use these connectors. It gives you some time to think. So when you are asked a question about, say, if every person in the society had the same income, would the society be fairer? If that's the question, you can actually pick one connector and make your sentence. Connectors also add a structure to the way you're answering a question. So anyone who has used or knows about the star format, you can actually add these connectors to elaborate your answer. One thing I've noticed in most interviews is that structure is lacking, especially when the question is difficult. So, ma'am, I don't know how to continue. So that's it. I've had so many girls completing a sentence with that's it or that's not right. So try and use these connectors when you're structuring a difficult answer the next time you're having a conversation or giving an interview, and let me know if this would build in your confidence of using these connectors correctly. At most times, when there is an agreement or a disagreement, do not keep adding connectors because your entire answer cannot be full of connectors. So I remember a girl when she was giving an interview. She said, "Ma'am, firstly, I think Darjeeling is very pretty. Then I don't know which city, say Delhi. Secondly, I like to eat. Secondly, the Darjeeling weather is good. Thirdly, fourthly, and that's how she kept adding numbers like first, second, third, fourth, fifth. And then she ended it with lastly. So avoid that kind of a structure. It doesn't sound right. So you can begin with firstly, and then you can build on. Okay, so firstly, I think Darjeeling is much prettier than any metro city. It's got a great weather. It's got a clean infrastructure. It's high up in the hills, as a result of which the weather is cooler. It's less polluted. Whenever we are as a family visiting Darjeeling, it's easier to spend time with the family because there's a lot of space, there's not so much of noise. And the reason there is no noise is because it's got a lesser population. Of course, during the holidays or festivities or long weekends, it does get crowded up. For instance, when we went to Darjeeling last April, because of the summer vacations, it had a lot of people over there. But however, all in all, I think Darjeeling is much better than any metro in India. So if you all paid attention, you all must have realized which connectors are used. And I picked one from each one of them. So this is how you kind of elaborate on the answer. Clear? I hope this logic is useful. Full of the time. I know it's 10:30. I need 10 more minutes if you all are okay, or should we continue this next Thursday? Works? Thank you so much. Now, sometimes the sentences that you all use are really, really basic. The concept is basic, but the interviewer wants to listen to your maturity. They're not just looking at your vocabulary, which means sometimes even if you use basic words, in spite of that, you all should be able to have an opinion. You should be able to come not strongly with a concluding statement, but be able to close the answer. So if you have if you have a question which is say a little different, then sometimes interviewers ask questions which you can't predict. At least that's what I've heard. That's what I've figured out in my experience. One of the times they asked that, if you found a wallet with a lot of money in it, what would you do? And there's no one to claim it. So at that point in time, if you're not certain, you should you should be able to use the phrase. For example, it depends on how much money is there in the wallet and who's lost it. Okay, if you're not sure, or if you're sure, overall, I think it's unethical to keep the wallet, and thus I would go to the nearest airline employee and return the wallet. So these phrases will help you in some way to sound more mature when you're giving your answer. What you'll also need to remember is not to speak too fast. Okay, so the pace at which I am speaking right now, literally you must speak at this pace or slightly faster when you're having a conversation. And that's largely because it gives you time to think. It gives you time to think of which word, which connector, which structure to use. If you're going to speak really, really fast, and whether it's you, me, or anybody on earth, we will end up making mistakes because we are not native English speakers. My native language is possibly Hindi, yours must be Gujarati, Bengali. There's so many regional languages. So it's important to kind of slow down on your pace so that you know that which word should be used when. Yeah. So try and use these phrases. I'm going to show a few more, and I think then we could conclude. So this is a star formula which I think everybody can use in any situation. So if they are asking you a question which is situational, example, if you are stranded on an island with just your favorite person, with just one person, who would it be? So you need to be able to state the situation that you are in. You should be able to give a reason, which is why are you picking that answer. You should be able to give an example, and you should be able to conclude. So A different way of structuring is also STAR, which is situation, task, action, and result, or a SOAR method, which is situation, obstacle, action, and result. You can use these templates whenever there is a question where you have to showcase your expertise or your viewpoint, or how would you overcome a hurdle. So keep this four-part structure. If you are practicing for any interview, you should be able to speak uninterrupted for 60 seconds to 120 seconds on a particular question. If you cannot, then you might want to go back and practice, and let me know in the chat box if you all really want a open house Thursday where you all just want me to listen to you and answer, give you feedback on if you all are answering it correctly or not. I'll be happy to do that next Thursday. So let me know in the chat box. But that's when you all will have to talk, right? I'm not going to do the talking then. You all will have to do the talking then. So with this, I'm going to stop presenting, and I want you all to quickly tell me in the chat box if this session was valuable. I would love a group selfie photo. So it would be wonderful to see all you pretty faces just for 5 minutes so that I could quickly take a snapshot and post it on my story. I strongly believe that it is a valuable session. Thank you so much, everyone. There is no current. Okay. There is no electricity. There is no current is incorrect English, darling. Yeah. Good to see you, Ayushi, once again. Good to see you, Shreya. Such a pretty shirt. Such a pretty shirt. I love the
Thank you,
color.
ma'am.
I love the color. Ayushi's always got a hair, absolutely pretty looking, even at 11 o'clock at night. I really don't know how you manage that. Yeah. Very pretty.
Mom, I just got it out of my Judah. Ma'am, I had a question. Like, whenever I speak, as I mentioned before that I'm doing PhD. So while in my classes, I answer a lot of questions. But in some questions, at the end of it, I couldn't form sentences. Like as you mentioned before, like the answer ends with "that's it, that's all." I could remember that I was doing the same thing, and at that moment, I couldn't remember anything.
Got it. So, one important thing would be to conclude strongly. So, I'll just open it up, depending on which question it is. But you can use the word overall, or you could, what I generally tell all the girls whom I have taught, take the question and make it into an answer. So, because of this, and then the answer. Yeah. One thing which I always tell everyone is you must lower your volume, your tone when you're ending a sentence. Okay. If you are ending a sentence and if I stop, it sounds incomplete, right? So I'm gonna give you like a sentence, a question. Can you suppose the question is how do we end a conversation versus ma'am, how do we end a conversation? Right? So in those instances, if you close the sentence on a very high note, then it sounds that the question is incomplete and it needs to be answered. So you need to modulate your voice a little bit, but again, that will come with practice. Awesome. Good to see you, Vaibhavi. I'm not sure how many of you all heard through the entire thing, but I honestly hope it added value and look forward to all of you all in a fantastic uniform of any airline at this point in time. I know all of you all have certain preferences, but I would not want to name that out loud. I don't want to be biased, but I honestly wish you all the best for whichever airline, whichever job you all choose.